For over 3,000 years, one weapon system totally dominated the battlefield. And no, it wasn't a sword or a bow or even a cannon. It was the perfect fusion of man and beast, the mounted warrior. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of cavalry.
That's right, the horse and rider. But how did this combination become so incredibly dominant for so long? And what, after thousands of years, finally brought that incredible reign to an end? Well, let's find out. I just love this description from one of our sources because it's perfect. A cavalry charge wasn't just a physical attack. It was psychological warfare. Imagine the ground shaking, the terrifying noise. The whole point was to break an enemy's will to fight before a single sword was even swung.
Okay, so to really understand cavalry's long dominance, we first have to look at its fundamental advantages. We have to see how the horse itself became this incredible war machine that soldiers on foot just couldn't hope to match.
The key word here is synergy. This wasn't just a soldier who happened to be riding a horse. No. This was a complete weapon system. The horse brings the speed and the raw power, the mass, while the rider provides the intelligence and the weapon. And together, they were something way, way greater than the sum of their parts.
And when you put them side by side like this, the difference is just staggering. An army on foot is slow. Its vision is limited. Its whole strategy is based on just grinding the enemy down. But with cavalry, suddenly a commander could move forces at lightning speed, see what was over the next hill, and, most importantly, deliver a knockout blow that could shatter an enemy formation in minutes.
So where did this revolutionary idea even come from? For that, we've got to go to the vast open grasslands of Eurasia, where nomadic peoples didn't just ride horses, they basically lived on them.
These guys, the riders of the steppes, like the Scythians and the Huns, they were the original masters. For them, the horse was absolutely everything. It was their transportation, their food source, and the foundation of their entire military power. They perfected a whole new way to fight, becoming the world's first true missile cavalry. Using these incredibly powerful composite bows from horseback, they could just harass, exhaust, and pick apart huge armies without ever getting close enough for a real fight.
And you better believe the big empires of the day took notice. They did more than that. They adapted. To counter this new threat, they developed their own shock cavalry. Persia created the cataphract, basically an armored juggernaut, where both the rider and the horse were covered head to toe in armor. Meanwhile, Alexander the Great used his elite companion cavalry like a surgeon's scalpel, the hammer that would smash his opponents after his infantry, the anvil, had locked them in place. This whole cat-and-mouse game between missile and shock cavalry would define warfare for the next 1,000 years.
So this concept just kept evolving over the centuries, reaching its absolute peak in the medieval and Napoleonic eras. This is when cavalry truly became the undisputed king of the battlefield, the apex predator of its time.
The medieval knight was the ultimate shock weapon, and it was all made possible by a couple of key pieces of tech. First, the stirrup. It seems simple, but it anchored the rider to the horse, letting him put the entire mass of his charging horse behind the tip of his lance. The result? A living, breathing battering ram that could just punch a hole through almost any infantry line.
And if the European knight perfected the single devastating charge, while the Mongols perfected cavalry warfare, their advantage wasn't just a single tactic, it was their whole system. Their armies were made up almost entirely of cavalry. They could travel for weeks, with each warrior bringing multiple horses. This, combined with their incredible command structure and logistics, allowed them to blend the hit-and-run archery of their ancestors with devastating heavy lancer charges on a continental scale.
Okay, let's fast forward to Napoleon. He took all these ideas and basically professionalized them. He didn't just have cavalry, he had a system, a whole toolbox. Heavy cavalry, like the cuirassiers, they were his sledgehammers, there to smash the enemy line. Medium cavalry would then exploit the gap, and the light cavalry, they were his eyes and ears, scouting ahead and chasing down a broken enemy. It was a beautiful, integrated part of his war machine.
But even at its absolute peak, cavalry had a weakness, a real Achilles heel. You see, well-disciplined infantry could form a square, a bristling little box of bayonets pointing outwards. And horses, they're not stupid. They will not charge into a solid wall of sharp steel. This one, simple formation was the tactical counter that really signaled the beginning of the end.
And that end, when it finally came, was driven by technology. The very same human ingenuity that created the knight's armor and his lance would now create the weapons that made him completely obsolete.
You can really see this decline as a gradual technological progression. It started with longbows and pike formations that could keep knights at a distance. Then came the early, clumsy firearms. But the real game changers were the rifled musket and modern artillery in the 19th century. And finally, the nail in the coffin, the machine gun.
If you want a perfect, tragic example of this, look no further than the famous Charge of the Light Brigade. It was an act of unbelievable bravery, for sure, but it was also basically a suicide mission. Galloping straight into the mouths of modern cannons showed the entire world that courage alone just couldn't overcome firepower anymore.
And the reason for this was pretty simple. The kill zone around an infantry unit just kept getting bigger and bigger. With an old smoothbore musket, cavalry had to get within about 100 meters to be in real danger. But with a rifled, repeating firearm, they were taking accurate, deadly fire from hundreds of meters away, long before they could even begin their charge. The battlefield itself had become a death trap.
So the horse was retired from the battlefield. But did cavalry really die? Or did it just evolve? Because the core principles that made it so effective are, honestly, more relevant today than ever. Just think about it. What were the core principles? Mobility, shock action, reconnaissance, and exploitation. These were the pillars of cavalry doctrine for 3,000 years. And guess what? They're the exact same principles that guide modern mechanized warfare today. The mission hasn't changed at all, only the tools have. I mean, this slide says it all. We simply traded biological horsepower for engine power. The role of the charging knight, that armored fist designed to smash through enemy lines, that job is now done by the main battle tank. The spirit of the cavalry charge is alive and well. It just runs on diesel now.
Which leaves us with a final thought, right? For millennia, the horse was the undisputed engine of war, until technology made it obsolete. Today, tanks and jets and drones, they are our engines of war. Looking forward, you just have to wonder, what will be the technology that finally replaces them?